Hi friends, it's Scryfall Shenanigans time again. Any time is Scryfall Shenanigans time in my book. So yeah, I wanted to do a small set with the Mythics, and I thought, why not do Worldwake, seeing as we've been, lingering around Zendikar already. So it was a good one to do. Got our old friend Jace in here as well. So 10 Mythics in Worldwake, and the colour breakdown before we start to look at the individual cards and interesting rules stuff and the other things we look at in this series. But yeah, look at the colour breakdown. So we got one white Mythic, one blue, which is a Planeswalker. So this is a creature, this is a Planeswalker. A black creature, a red instant, a red creature, so 2 in red, 2 in green, creature elemental, and a legendary creature elemental. And then we've got a blue-black card in the form of a legendary creature Kraken, so Rexel, Nova Blast Worm, which is green-white, and then this interesting legendary land which doesn't produce mana. It sort of aids with colourless Eldrazi spells and acts as a tutor for colourless creatures. So not just Eldrazi, but any colourless creatures. So yeah, interesting stuff going on here. Lots to smile about because we've got a very powerful Planeswalker, some interesting legendary creatures here, some fun stuff. That's pretty splashy, and our affects the game card that you sometimes will see at higher rarities. Not always in every set, but yeah, in this one we've got Abyssal Persecutor, so you can't win the game and your opponents can't lose the game. Flying trample 6/6. So let's go through these in price order, so most expensive at the top, but it also gives us an opportunity in this view to have a look at the difference between the errata text and the original text, if there are any, what its status is in various formats. For instance, Eye of Ugin is banned in Modern, and I tend to forget about this, but might point out some interesting related searches that I always tend to forget about when I'm talking about Scryfall. For instance, here you can do a nice nifty search for cards that Eye of Ugin can search for. So you get the appropriate search there. So it's easy to forget about those. So always keep your eye out for these related searches, because there's lots of interesting things that you can learn in terms of the searches you can do to help you find cards that are usable with other cards. So $79 from original Worldwake. It was reprinted, funnily enough. So banned in Modern. It was reprinted in Modern Masters. You've got to laugh sometimes. And then we've got this rather snazzy Zendikar Expeditions version with the interesting layout on the card. It was a Judge's Gift card as well. 2020. That looks pretty nice. So those two would have been foil as well. Then we have Jace. So at the moment, Ugin is most expensive from Worldwake. Jace is now, because I can remember at the time when Worldwake came out, it was, people were just obsessed with pulling Jaces from what I remember at the time. And I know there was a lot of excitement around because if you remember when they brought the Deck Builders Toolkit out, it had boosters in there from around that period in Magic. And there was a good chance you had a Worldwake pack in there. And if you had a Worldwake pack, well, there was a bit of a chance, however small, that you might pull a Jace. So I remember people getting very excited if they ever pulled a Jace from a Deck Builders Toolkit. But I can't remember what the price got up to for this, but it just was I remember it being all over the format, and Of course, you've got cards that can deal with the counters on here, but yeah, it was a real problem card. And then you had instances where that thing, because of the legendary rule that also applies to planeswalkers, this idea of actually people sideboarding planeswalkers just had to have a way of blowing up if an opponent played a certain planeswalker. So they'd often sideboard the same planeswalker so that they had a way of removing it. You can see it's been reprinted a few times, but there was quite a big gap here. Obviously didn't want to reprint this, so it's not surprising. It's not surprisingly not turned up. Is that right? Anyway, it's not turned up in standard ever again. Was in the From the Vaults 20 set, and things like Online Vintage Masters, Eternal Masters, which was a paper set, Masters 25, and then Double Masters. Yeah. Oh, it did turn up as a Mythic edition as well. Anything changed much here? And the other thing is it was, we don't see this too often, I don't think, but it's like got 4 abilities on it as well. So 3 loyalty, but it has a +2 ability. So you look at the top card of a target player's library, you may put that card on the bottom of that player's library. So was that Fate Seal, I think? So it's got Fate Seal on it. It's got draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library and in order. So that's a brainstorm, isn't it? Something like that. Excuse me if I'm getting these wildly wrong, but I do have problems remembering what specific cards do. So you've got Fate Seal. A brain. Is that a brainstorm? I'm going to have to look it up now. Draw 3 cards and put 2 cards from your hand on top of the library. Yeah, so it is a brainstorm. Okay, and then we got -1, which is a bounce spell. Return target creature to its owner's hand, so bouncing back to hand. And then you have the ultimate, which is exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles their hand into their library. Yeah. Venture of Zendikar. This is a neat card. So creates 0/1 green plant creature tokens for each land you control when it enters the battlefield, and has landfall on it. So whenever a land you control enters, you may put a +1/+1 counter on each plant creature you control. So I've seen this is really interested in a card in like a plant token EDH deck. I mean, you can play around with other cards that also have start putting counters on plant tokens and stuff like that. And again, it's pretty much stayed out of standard, I think. Did end up in your dual deck and was in the Commander products, 2013 one. I'm trying to remember what that would have been. Or what the theme of the Commanders was for that was. Because that was the second Commander deck product, because if you remember they skipped a year, didn't they? They did 2011, which was 3 colour cards, and then 2012 they did that funny Commander's Arsenal business, and then 2013 was the next one. Were they the mono-coloured Planeswalkers? I'm trying to remember that you could play as Commanders. Anyway. Yeah, but it was in one of the decks. Yeah. So probably what the mono green one, if I've got it right. Omnath, Locus and Mana. I remember this being in the From the Vaults Legends. So, and also in that Commander collection as well. And then it was reprinted again in Commander Masters. So 322. I don't think many of these, and we'll be looking at the individual rules in a moment, but in terms of being errated, It looks like they haven't really changed that much on these cards. Abyssal Persecutor, Worldwake, Commander 2014. Maybe that was on with the Planeswalkers. I always forget that, one, there's like one Commander product with shards, another one was wedges, and then we had Planeswalkers that were commanders, and what was the other one? Partners, all those sort of things, so they could have like 4 colour decks and stuff like that. So even though I've featured these multiple on the channel, I can never remember the thematic, what the theme was each year. Oh yeah, it was in Iconic Masters, wasn't it? And yeah, Tales of Middle Earth. 220. Rexall, that was in Commander 2011. Yeah. And in the second anthology, which would have been a reprint, one of the decks from the deck it was in from 2011 would have been reprinted for the anthology. It's a Secret Lair drop. And new Capenia Commander. It's got Island Walk and Swamp Walk on it. Nova Blast Worm, only ever printed in Worldwake, 193. Dragon Master Outcast. So this spits out dragon tokens on your upkeep if you control 6 or more lands. So you put a 5/5 red dragon creature token flying onto the battlefield. So you'll notice with where this style of thing has been errated about talking about putting tokens onto the battlefield, the errata text is sort of simplified. It just says create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. Putting it onto the battlefield is now just a given. So Worldwake was in Battle for Zendikar. 2019 Commander. Historic Anthology was in those starter Commander decks. Phyrexian will be one. So yeah, I think, isn't this the only card? This would be the only card here, I think. Was Comet Storm reprinted anything? Yeah, so that's the only card, I think, so far, and going beyond the other ones that's actually been reprinted in another set rather than either a deck, a set that was legal in standard, as opposed to either special sets which weren't legal in standard or decks, precons. And we've got Admonition Angel with landfall on it and flying. Whenever a land you control enters, you may exile target non-land permanent other than Admonition Angel. When Admonition Angel leaves the battlefield, return all cards exiled with it to the battlefield under their owner's control. So yeah, whenever a land's entering the battlefield you control, you get to exile target non-land permanent. And that was in Zendikar Rising Commander, and it was a Secret Lair drop. Comet Storm. So X and 2 red spell, also has multi-kicker on it. Choose target creature or player, then choose another target or creature or player for each time Comet Storm was kicked. Comet Storm deals X damage to each of them. $1. It's turned up in Commander quite a few times. You can see why. Quite nice sort of way of utilising, leveraging excess mana. Okay, so let's go through these in order of their sort of different types. So we have one Planeswalker that's a mythic, which is Jace. You draw 3 cards and put 2 cards back, all while Jace's second ability is resolving. Nothing can come between the two, and no player may choose to take actions. If the target player for Jace's last ability has no cards in hand, that player shuffles nothing into their library, and that player's library will remain empty. That player won't lose the game until they try to draw from the empty library. Let's see what we have for the tagger. Oh, there we go. Maybe I should have waited here. So yeah, Brainstorm. It's got Fate Seal on it. I'll have a look at it in a moment. Bounce. Discard to library. Has 4 loyalty abilities. We'll definitely look at that. It's a mill as well to... Well, it's a mill to exile. But then, so it says exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library. And Scry-like, because you're choosing, if you choose to leave the card on the top, if you don't put it on the bottom, because you may put the card on the bottom of that player's library. So it's a Scry-like, and you can obviously target yourself as well. So yeah. Yeah, removal creature bounce. So 4 loyalty abilities. So there's only 8 here with four loyalty abilities, and this one, it's on the flip side. If you look at that historically, we've definitely been down this rabbit hole before. Yeah, that's the first one. Then we get Garrick the Slayer. Garrick Apex Predator. Chandra Torch of Defiance. So that was a pre-release card. Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh. The Ravager has Nicol Bolas the Arisen on the other side. Ren and Seven. And then Jaya Fiery Negotiator. So, Fate Seal. The ability to scry another player's library instead of your own. Variants of this ability may allow you to choose between your own library and that of another player's. Okay. Yeah, that's it too often, do you? There we go. So the name here. So sometimes when you get these things named, it's because it's a reference to a previous card. What's interesting is when they printed the future shifted cards for Future Sight, you can see it's an ability on one of those. It's Fate Seal. It's actually turned up as a keyworded ability. And you can see here it's got a number there, so Fate Seal 1 is just the top card, Fate Seal 2 is the top 2 cards. And then we have good old Brainstorm, 14 cards with a Brainstorm ability on them, including, surprise, surprise, Brainstorm. So yeah, this is clearly named after a card. Got Sylvan Library, Conchorn, Brainstorm, Dream Cache, Scroll Rack, which it's been reprinted a few times. Yeah, it was actually reprinted there you go, in the Commander's Arsenal. Survivor of the Unseen, Jason My Sculptor, Enter the Infinite, Riverwise Augur, Aminatu the Fate Shifter, Cavalier of Gales, Brainstone, Hidesugu, and Gary, I think that is. I've pretty mangled that. And then Brain Search, draw 4 cards and put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Yep, Sylvan Library, but that's pretty pricey, $128. I keep forgetting it got reprinted in 4th edition. And was actually in the Commander's Arsenal. I know it was a Magic Online promo, and from Magic Online they shoved it into Masters Edition. Also turned up in 5th edition as well. Dream Cash. Elves Commander 2018. Looks always reminds me of V from Vendetta. Looks like they're wearing a mask. Okay. Anything else? I think the rest is pretty straightforward. Oh yeah, there's Mind Sculpt. And we got Chase Perfected Mind. Okay, 2 legendary creatures that are mythics. Omnath. So yeah, interesting. So 2 and a green, 1/1. Green mana doesn't empty from your mana pool as steps and phases end. Omnath Locus of Mana gets +1/+1 for each green mana in your mana pool. You can keep green unspent mana indefinitely while Omnath is on the battlefield. That means if you add a green mana during one step of or phase, you can spend it during a later step or phase, or even a later turn. Other types of mana will be lost as normal as each step and phase ends. If a green mana you produce has certain restrictions or riders associated with it, for example, if it was produced by Ancient Ziggurat, they'll apply to that mana no matter when you spend it. And once Omnath leaves the battlefield, you have until the end of the current step or phase to spend your unspent green mana before its 2 is lost as normal. There is no penalty associated with this other than the loss of mana. Yep, so there's quite a number of cards that do mana storage one way or another. And it's just, there's quite a big variety of ways in which that can be done. So there, it was as a static ability. We've got these mana batteries which do it through counters. So, you can see there's one for each colour, and then you sort of do 2 and tap it, and you can put 1 counter on blue mana, and then you can get those counters out if you want. Tap, add blue to your mana pool, remove as many counters as you wish. For each counter removed, add blue to your mana pool. This ability is played as interrupt, so how's that worded here? 2, put a charge counter, remove any number of charge counters from mana battery, add blue, then add an additional blue for each charge counter removed this way. Yeah, so just be mindful of that. I'm getting extra. And we got City of Shadows, which uses counters, but it's interesting how you put the counters there by sacrificing one of your creatures and then exiling it. And we have these cards. So these were from Fallen Empires, and they came into play tapped, and you could choose to not untap it and put a storage counter on instead, and then later on remove any number of storage counters from Dwarven Hold. For each storage counter removed, add red, in this case for Dwarven Hold, red to your mana pool. Notice it's not the same as the blue mana batteries where you get the mana and the additional mana for however many counters are on there if you remove them. So yeah, one for each colour. We've got Iceberg, which plays around with ice counters. Ice Cauldron. Yeah, so that does that complicated thing where you exile a non-land card from your hand. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. Put a charge counter on Ice Cauldron and note the type and amount of mana spent to pay this activation cost. Activate only if there are no charge counters on Ice Cauldron. Tap and remove a charge counter from Ice Cauldron. Add Ice Cauldron's last noted type and amount of mana. Spend this mana only to cast the last card exiled with Ice Cauldron. You've got Jeweled Amulet. Oh, yeah, these as well. The Mercadian Mask ones come into play tapped. You put a storage counter on it, and then you can remove any number of storage counters. Add one white mana to your mana pool for each storage counter, and there's one for each colour. So we've got Upwelling. And this is one of my favourite bits of artwork of all time, actually. I had this as a, not a screensaver, but a desktop artwork for a long time, way back when it first came out. Yeah, mana pools don't empty at the end of your phases or turns. So, you know, taken that and stapled it to Omnath. The other interesting things like Coalition Relic, then stuff like Pentad Prism with the Sunburst business, Meridian's Core, Gemstone Array, and these as well from Time Spiral, which were the dual lands with using storage counters. I've got Spawn Spire of Ulamog. So this is interesting because for 4 it puts 2/01 colourless Eldrazi Spawn creature tokens onto the battlefield. They have sacrificed this creature, add 1 to your mana pool, and you've got 20. Cast any number of Eldrazi cards you own from outside the game without paying their mana cost. So it's an interesting sort of accumulation of mana, I suppose, done via potentially, I mean, you can use other mana for this, but potentially done via Eldrazi Spawn creature tokens. Yeah, so lots of interesting ways in Magic, or several interesting ways in Magic of storing stuff. Storing mana. Okay, so let's just go back. One thing I didn't do on the previous one, but I will do here. Let's just dive into Cube Cobra. Interesting. So yeah, often drafted with mana generators. Surprise, surprise. What does it synergize with? Well, okay, yeah. Spell reductions. There's a number of interesting green cards there. Actually, let's just skip back to Jace. We didn't really give Jace the appropriate cube Cobra treatment. Primary cryptic command, time walk, wow. Ancestral recall. Well, some pretty expensive cards here. Oh, there's Brainstorm. Oh, Consecrated Sphinx, yes. So whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. Yeah. Oh, phantasmal image. And Phyrexian Metamorph. Oh, yeah. I do like these cards that come in as a copy of something else. That's pretty pricey, isn't it, as well, I think. Exchange control of Gilded Drake for target creature. One of your opponents controls and sacrifice Gilded, or sacrifice Gilded Drake. Oh, one call engine, wow. Okay. Rexil. What's it got there? If you want to cast a targeted card, you cast it as part of the resolution of Rexil's triggered ability. Timing restrictions based on the card types are ignored. Other restrictions are not, such as cast this card only during your end step. If you're unable to cast a targeted card, there are no legal targets for the spell. For example, nothing happens when the ability resolves and the card remains in its owner's graveyard. If you cast a card without paying its mana cost, you can pay any... start again. If you cast a card without paying its mana cost, you can't pay any alternative costs. On the other hand, if the card has additional costs such as kicker or multi-kicker, you may pay those. If you cast a targeted card and it would be put into its owner's graveyard from the stack for any reason, either because it resolves or because it's countered, that card is exiled instead. Evasion, free cast another. We're seeing Saboteur a lot in these series. Effects that trigger when you deal combat damage to an opponent. Theft cast, that's a good term. So theft cast has 166 cards. You can do theft cast for. Word of command and desertion. Yeah. Oh yeah, these cards as well. Knowledge pool. Imprint. When knowledge pool enters the battlefield, each player exiles the top 3 cards of his or her library. Whenever a player casts a spell from his or her library, that player exiles it. If the player does, he or she may cast another non-land card exiled with knowledge pool without paying that card's mana cost. I have no recollection of this. Chancellor of the Spires. 4 and 3 blue. So that was a cycle of those Chancellors. I do remember Chancellor of the Dross. Oops. So yeah, that would, yeah, so that grants flashback actually without mentioning flashback. Cards which let you recast an instant source of the graph, whether for free or by paying its cost, include cards that don't actually grant the exact flashback effect. So it's 105 cards that fit into that category. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Often drafted with synergistic cards. It's funny. Artwork. Oh, I've got some cool legendaries here. Oh, there's a Selimgar, the Drifting Death. Oh yeah, Nemesis of Reason. So I did a episode recently on horrors on a certain set, I think. And I think I'd mentioned that there was a period in Magic where I sort of I bought up a few play sets of horrors just because I had this idea of building a standard League of Horrors deck, I think. I don't think I ever got round to it. It was rather bizarre, to say the least. Okay, so 5 creatures that aren't legendary. It's funny that if you had a blue one here, you'd have 5 mythic non-legendary creature cycle. I'm assuming this wasn't part of a cycle. So yeah, few rules there based around the landfall stuff. Okay. Banish a non-land. Okay. Remove all equipment. Oh, I see, yeah. So yeah, it can remove auras, it can remove equipment. Non-land permanent, other than Admonition Angel. It's flying. So evasion because it has flying. It's got to leave the battlefield trigger. Okay, let's look at Banish non-land. I don't know how big a thing that is. 35 cards. Specifically mention that they banish non-lands. Ah, good old Oblivion Ring. Yeah, I was trying to think, it was on the tip of my tongue. I was trying to think, yeah, there's an enchantment that does this, and I just cannot remember what it's called. So yeah, Oblivion Ring, Detention Sphere, Banishing Light. Yeah. Journey to Oblivion. Yeah, this is cool. Oh yeah, it was a different artwork on the dual decks as well. Yes, I remember now. I do like the old Lorwyn artwork though. I don't know what everybody else's favourite is, but I mean, they are not. They all have their own sort of unique thing. So that one that was reprint done for the dual decks, actually the artwork was from the Friday Night Magic promo. Interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what Magic Online theme deck that might be in. Not sure. Yeah, so yeah, there's 1,500 leave the battlefield trigger cards. So yeah, it's a thing. And lots of different cards that might fall into that category. Oh, so we've got Path to Exile, which is an instant, as opposed to Oblivion Ring, which is an enchantment. Deathbringer Liege. Okay, Abyssal Persecutor. Yeah, a few rules here, just to try and explain here what might go on. So, no game effect can cause you to win the game or cause any opponent to lose the game while you control Abyssal Persecutor. It doesn't matter whether an opponent has 0 or less life. An opponent is forced to draw a card while their library is empty. An opponent has 10 or more poison counters. An opponent is dealt damage by Phage, the Untouchable. You control a Philadar Sovereign and have 40 or more life, or so on. You keep playing. Other circumstances can still cause an opponent to lose a game. However, an opponent will lose a game if they concede. If that player is penalised with a game loss or a match loss during a sanctioned tournament due to a DCI rules infraction, or if that player's Magic Online game clock runs out of time. Yeah, of course, that's another. And it's funny, so you've played, well, there isn't there a clock? I'm trying to remember now. I've never played in a, like a sanctioned tournament in paper Magic. I've played online, not necessarily in sanctioned tournaments, but online you can actually run out of time on the clock. So yeah. Effects that say the game is a draw, such as the Legends TM card Divine Intervention, are not affected by Abyssal Persecutor. It won't preclude an opponent's life total from reaching 0 or less. It will just preclude that player from losing the game. If Abyssal Persecutor leaves the battlefield while an opponent has 0 or less life, that opponent will lose the game as a state-based action. No player can respond between the time Abyssal Persecutor leaves the battlefield and the time that player loses the game. Okay. Even though your opponents can't lose the game, a player can't pay an amount of life that's greater than their life total. If a player's life total is 0 or less, that player can't pay life at all, with one exception. A player may always pay 0 life, just in case you wondered. Yeah. Oh yeah, Platinum Angel. So that's the mirror, isn't it? Because Abyssal Persecutor is you can't win the game and your opponents can't lose the game, and Platinum Angel is you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. Yeah, group hug card. Okay, so we've got 26 prevents win-loss cards. It is something I have looked at before, but I will revisit this. Excuse my stomach. Yeah, so yeah, Leash first time. You've got things like Divine Intervention and so on. There's Platinum Angel, Leash's Tomb, Angel's Grace, Leash's Mirror, Abyssal Persecutor, Phyrexian Unlife. You don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. As long as you have 0 less life, all damage is dealt to you as though its source has infect. So some of these, obviously, you can lose the game for other reasons, because they're about specific about, you know, circumstances in which you could lose the game. Whereas this, you know, flat out says you can't win the game and your opponents can't lose the game, and same with Platinum Angel, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. But you'll notice that several of these, it's like losing the game for a specific reason can't happen. Okay, let's look at the synergistic stuff. Ooh. Now, I remember at some point it's got quite expensive. I don't know how much it is now. Yeah, I remember it from Dark Ascension. Old Vampire Nighthawk. And Languish was -4/-4 for 4. And that was from Magic Origins. Dragon Master Outcast. Lands Matter Repeat, Token Generation Evasion. I mean, yeah, there's a number of cards that have repeatable token generation. Not unusual. You'll probably find a lot of these are landfall cards from the sets that had it. And let's have a look at Cube Cobra. See what it synergizes with. Oh, Magma Quake. Ah, some nice dragons here. Hellkite Charger. Oh dear, my tummy's rumbling. Avenger of Syndicate. Avenger of Syndicate. What's that? Phylath World Sculptor. Okay. Oh yeah, Plant Tribal. I didn't mention it, didn't I? So there we go. I mean, beyond that, how many cards in Magic mention plant in? There we go. So we've got a few references to plants. Some because of Power Plant. If you ignore those. The Necrobloom. So yeah, if you fancy doing something a bit planty, if I go back, I should be able to. Let's dive in here. So what commanders is it recommended? There's your combos. There's your similar cards. I wonder if if it actually was in the Windgrace deck, actually. Not sure. The plants and tree folk get +2, +0. Well, it seems like the one to play. And then Nova Blast Worm. Sweep a creature, destroy. That creature's energy. So, if we look at that category, but specifically creatures that do that, 25. Oh, yeah, Get to the Lion, yes, of course. How could one forget? And a Revive a Demon. Mages of the Disc. Wow. Once it untaps. Sunblast Angel, of course. All other. Try and narrow that down a bit. Okay, so 10 cards that are creatures but they destroy all other things. Good. Okay, let's have a look at synergistic stuff. Oh, Kiora, Transcendent Master, Celestial Mantle, Desolation Twin Well, of course, Sigarda. Oh, my old friend, Sekar Death Keeper. It's a fun card to build around. Oh, there's Teneb, so that's black, red, green. Renegade Doppelganger. Another one of those creatures that becomes a copy of when it comes into play. always like that explosive vegetation artwork. Does what it says on the tin. And there's Genesis Wave. And Dune Blast. And yeah, Planar Cleansing from M10. Wow. Oh, yeah. So cool. Right. Moving on. Comet Storm. So the only instant that's a mythic. The number of targets you choose for Comet Storm is one more than the number of times it's kicked. First, you declare how many times you're going to kick the spell. At the same time, you declare the value of X. Then you choose the targets accordingly. Then you pay the cost. No player can respond between the time you declare how many times you kick the spell and the time you choose the targets. Each target you choose must be different. And there's an example there of how it might pan out with the costs. As long as any of its targets are legal at the time Comet Storm resolved, Comet Storm will deal X damage to each of those legal targets. Oh, okay. The ultimate nightmare of Wizards customer service deals X damage to each of Y target creatures and Z target players. Better than Volcanic Geyser, which is an X and 2 red spell. Similar to Fireball, so that's an X and a red. This spell costs 1 more to cast for each target beyond the first. Fireball is X damage divided evenly, rounded down among any number of targets. Strive. Cards that require playing an additional cost per additional target. Let's see what we have here. Okay. Fireball. That one. And Comet Storm. Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got quite a few. Yeah, Strive effect, of course. Yeah. So loads there from that block. What was it? Does it? Journey into Nyx. So that was the second. Was that the second set of the block? Zeros block. Trying to remember. I think so. Oh, we get it in Commander. Last time we saw it was Murders at Karloff Manor in terms of a new card. Okay, what's nice and succinct in terms of cards that do that. Okay, well, what synergies do we see here? Oh, Hammer of Porphyros. Yeah, I imagine things get quite out of control once you start like ramping up the amount of damage with other cards. As well, I'm trying to think of the card that does that. Actually, there's an enchantment, isn't there, that sits around. And amplifies up the damage. Oh, that's Cauldron Domes. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the card actually. It's gone. I just can't. I think you know the type of card I'm thinking of, but basically the ones that take something and like double up the spell in some way. Okay. And we've got Eye of Ugin, which is banned in Modern. It doesn't have a mana ability. Second ability lets you find a colourless creature in your deck, such as an artifact creature card that has no coloured mana, symbols in its mana cost, or a creature card that's become colourless due to Mycosynth Lattice. Misform Ultimatus and creatures that, with Changeling are Eldrazi. Don't forget. If they become colourless, possibly due to Mycosynth Lattice, Eye of Ugin would reduce the cost to cast them by 2. Yep. And as I pointed out, there's the related search business. Yep, so cost reducer, mechanical foreshadowing. Card to reference other card types or mechanics not yet seen in the game. So if you look at this in their original form, you should get an idea. Okay. So you've got stuff here that's mentioning other cards. Something mentioning contraption here. This one here has the term Planeswalker in the card type reminder. This one references Eldrazi and so on. So yeah, it doesn't happen very often. I never know whether the one that mentioned the Planeswalker wasn't that just accidental, because they were originally going to put Planeswalkers in earlier sets, but didn't, because they weren't ready. So I don't think that was necessarily intentional. Or maybe it was there and they just thought, let's just leave it in, rather than forgot to take it out. Yeah, creature tribal synergy, tutor. Yeah, so interesting card, and the whole mannerless land thing, which I know we've discussed numerous occasions before, because it does come up fairly regularly in these sort of Scryfall type episodes. I think I'd mentioned about this on a previous week, the arena cards. So if we go into his first printing, just to give you a bit of a clearer idea when they appeared. So yeah, we've got a number of cards that fall into this category from Arabian Nights. We've got these ones from Legends, The Dark. This one, which was reprinted later, but is was originally part of that Harper Prison book promos, and then the Ice Age stuff, which is how I was speaking about it earlier, because in a previous episode I was talking about Ice Age lands. And we've got Tempest and so on. So yeah. Funny that wasn't an intentional overlap actually, but that often happens when I'm doing these series. You get an unintentional link. Okay, and then we get onto the EDHRec. Oh, actually, sorry. Got a bit too excited there. Let's go back a stage, shall we? Hang on. That's better. Well, I wanted to do is just go in here and have a look at Cube Cobra. Okay, so yeah, often drafted with, well, surprise, surprise, Eldrazi stuff. Yeah, and synergistic cards. That's a nice Eldrazi temple there. And the other one I'm thinking of, what's it? Eldrazi, so it's Eldrazi Monument. Although I don't know whether it would necessarily be synergistic here. But yeah. It's another Eldrazi card that I'm minded of. Notice we don't get land Eldrazi. I don't think we do. Okay, so EDHRec ranking, top of the pile, Avenger of Zendikar. But yeah, quite a few here that are fun to play in EDH decks. With various commanders. I mean, this one, as I think we were looking at earlier, yeah, sort of plant deck, fun for that. And then what do we get? Jace in. Let's have a look. Oh, here we go. Yep, there is a Jace we can play as a commander. So that's nice. Jace and Jace. All the Jaces. Yes, there's various yeah, what do they call it? Super Friends type decks you can go down as well. There. Now the other one, if I go into here, I'm pretty sure what's going to come up as suggestions. Okay, so we've got top commanders of the Eldrazi, basically. Oh, Morathon, of course, yeah. So what about this? That. Yeah, so play Morathon and then name Eldrazi as your chosen type. And in a 5-colour deck, you cheat them out. That's 5 drops. Whoops. That's no fun. Okay, I think I'm going to have to stop now and have something to eat because my tummy's very, very gurgly indeed. Let's have a quick look at Abyssal Persecutor before I do that. Oh, there's Phage there. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks once again for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I will catch you in a future episode.